Dear students, welcome to Army Public School PMA Resource Network. Before we start our today's subject, English Literature, please subscribe this page and click on bell icon. On today's subject, we are going to discuss chapter number 1 of your novel, The Secret Garden. Now, this is the sequence of the lesson. What we are going to do in today's lesson. First of all, we will be recapitulating the introduction of novel and its components. Then the students will listen to teacher's narration. Then the students will read the chapter, recognize the traits of characters, and use of vocabulary journal. Now, we would start with Novel Pyramid, a journey of a novel. But before that, you must know what a novel is. Novel is actually a form of story. How is it different from short stories? That it is a bit longer one with the dialogues. So whenever you read out a novel, you would see that there are some dialogues between two characters or among characters who are more in number. Right. So, journey of a novel or novel pyramid. How does the novel start and where does it end? Right. Exposition. Now, what is exposition? It is the very start or introductory part of the novel. When we are done with exposition, now the exposition tells you about setting and characters. What is setting? Setting is the time and the place where the story has taken place. And character, is the person or the thing that is leading the story. Okay. So after exposition or introduction, we'll be heading towards the inciting incident. So there would be an incident in the story, an event in the story that will actually bring an excitement in the story that will rather keep the story going on. Now this incident or inciting incident will lead to the rising action. Now the story will move up. Novel pyramid is just like climbing up a mountain and climbing down it. So we start with bottom, that is exposition. Then there is an inciting incident. Then we move up to the mountain, that is the rising action. Now climax is the top of the mountain, means it is that event or that part of the story where there is a twist. You know that when we climb up a mountain, when we climb or reach on the top of the mountain, the next step is we have to climb down because there is no going up then. So climax is actually the top part. So when the story comes up to a climax, then there would be an incident and an event or happening that will take it to a falling degree. So now the story will fall down. Fall down means it doesn't mean that it will lose its excitement. No, but it will have some events that will be in opposite direction of the rising action. So they will fall down. There will be resolution, means the concluding part, and then denouncement, that is the conclusion. So this is how a novel moves. It starts with an exposition, it goes on to inciting incident that leads it to rising action, then it climbs up to the climax, then After climax, it climbs down to falling action, reaching the resolution, and by the end, it concludes at denouncement. Now, components of the novel. What are the components, basic components of the novel, or the elements of the novel? So basic elements of a novel, that is the plot. What is a plot? Plot of any story usually begins with what we call the exposition. If you could see, I had just explained you exposition, that is the introduction. So plot of the story, it begins with exposition. So from the very start of the novel, the plot begins. In the introductory part, we are introduced to the setting, that is where and when the story takes place, means the place and the time, the main character, and sometimes other key characters. So exposition contains the setting and the main or key characters. Clues to the kinds of struggles the main character is likely to face. Again, the exposition will give us a hint, a clue that how would the story proceed, or what events we must expect in this story. The next stage in the plot is the rising action. So after the exposition, this is the rising action. What is rising action? This is usually a string of events in which the main character goes through all kinds of problems and challenges. We also called it conflict. So what is the next stage? That is rising action, which means that in this particular point, at this particular point, the main character faces the problems, the challenges of any kind. So we often become quite involved at this part of the plot unfolds and are keen to discover what happens next. So once the characters are facing problems and challenges, we come to know that the character must go on with some solution, right? Okay, now the rising action, this is actually the explanation of the novel pyramid or the journey of the novel. Right. So the rising action leads us to the climax, which is the high point of the story. As I had told you, that climax is actually the top of the mountain or the top point of the story, where the main character faces his or her most intense challenge, where the problem becomes even more complicated. And once that problem is faced by the main character, he devises a solution that leads to falling action. We call the falling action denouncement, which usually refers to one or several events that lead fairly quickly to the end. Right? So the intense challenge, the last one which the character faces, will make out will come out rather as a solution, and this solution will be leading us to falling action, that is denouncement or conclusion, that is end. Often we would want to know if conflict has been resolved or not. Finally, we have the end, which is called as resolution. So falling action, denouncement leads us to resolution, which usually leaves readers experiencing some feeling of satisfaction no matter what the outcome is, which means that actually the reader comes to know that yes, the story has ended and this was the conclusion or the result or the outcome of the story. Okay, then we'll be talking about the characters. What are the characters? The people in a story are called characters. Now, characters can be minor or major. There are two types of characters, minor or major. Major characters are those characters who are the main or key characters. As in dramas we say hero and heroine. So similarly those characters or even the villain is also the main character. And minor characters are the side characters that are supportive of the main characters. Right. Now character. When we talk about the characters or when we identify the characters, the traits of characters, what are some of the things that are to be found? First, the appearance of the character, the way he dresses means the appearance again, his facial features like his or her skin is tan in color, he's you see blue-eyed boy and something like that. The way he walks or stands. So our character must contain a description of the appearance, the way character dresses, his or her facial features, the way he walks or stands, right? Then the second thing that we need to know about character is what does the character say, right? What does the character say? What he does means the action of the character, the decisions he makes. So this way we would come to know that whether the character is wise or he is not that much wise, right? Then what others say about him? What are the opinion of other people about that character, right? Okay, now you as students will listen to narration conducted by me while keeping your novels closed and assess your understanding of the narration. Means how much of the content have you acquired from this listening activity. Right. 9-year-old Mary Lennox lived with her mother and father in a huge house in India. She was not very pretty and had yellow hair and a pale face because she was often ill. She was an only child, but her parents did not have a lot of time for her. The Indian servants looked after her and did everything for her. Mary became a very bossy little girl with no friends. Then one day, a terrible disease killed Mary's parents and most of the servants in the house. The rest of the servants ran away at night. Everybody forgot about little Miss Mary, and she stayed in the empty house alone. Two army officers went into the house to investigate. There is a child here. She's alone. Who is she? An army officer cried out when he saw the girl. My name is Mary Lennox, answered the girl angrily. Where is everybody? Why are my servants not here? Poor little girl. Everybody has left, said the officer. What are we going to do about her? Asked one of the men. She hasn't got anyone here in India, said the officer. But I have heard of an uncle in Yorkshire. Maybe she can go there. It was a long journey to England. When the ship arrived, Mary's uncle wasn't there to meet her. Mrs. Medlock, his housekeeper, was waiting for her. Mrs. Medlock was a strong woman with red cheeks. She was a good servant, but she did not know anything about children. They travelled by train, and on the way to Yorkshire, Mrs. Medlock turned and looked at the girl. Do you know anything about your uncle? she asked. No, said Mary. She tried to look like she didn't care. Mr. Archibald Craven lives in Maselwaith Manor, said the woman. It's 600 years old, and it has over 100 rooms and lots of gardens. Your uncle has got a bad back, and he is a difficult man. You see, his wife died a few years ago, and oh, she died. Mary jumped in. Yes, she died, answered Mrs. Medlock. He misses her very much. Now, he doesn't care about anybody. He isn't going to spend time with you. In fact, he often goes away. There is nobody to play with you at Maselweth. You can play outside, but you can't explore inside the house. There are rules. You must not open locked doors or play in the corridor. Mr. Craven won't like it. Mary said nothing, but she wasn't happy. She didn't like rules, and she didn't like getting orders from the servants. Now, the students, you will open your novels and read the chapter yourself twice. While reading the chapter, take important notes. You can take these notes in the form of written notes. You can either highlight or underline the important lines. Right, so this is page 4 and page 5. You have to read this chapter twice yourself. After you have read the chapter, how would you recognize the traits or characteristics of characters? First, while reading the chapter, underline the difficult or new words. Any word that you find difficult or it is new to you, just underline it. Try to find out the contextual meanings of the underlined words. Now, what is contextual meanings? You don't have to look the word into dictionary. Rather, make out the meaning with the within the paragraph or within the context or background of the paragraph, and just make out any meaning that you find appropriate. Then read the chapter again and see whether you are successful in acquiring or in understanding the chapter, or you still need dictionary to look down at the meanings of the difficult or new. Now, the use of vocabulary journal. What is the last task for today? That is, you have to write the underlined words in the vocabulary journal. All the underlined are new words that are found difficult by you. You have to write them in the vocabulary journal and write synonym and antonym for each of them. For this particular purpose, you will have to consult the dictionary. So, first underline the new or difficult words, write each word in vocabulary journal, and then find out or look down or look for the meaning. The synonym means the same meaning, and antonym the opposite meaning of that word. I hope you have understood all the things. That's all for today. Thank you so very much.